I'm going to show you how to make two of the elements from the panty liner set from Kreative Kiwi. I'm going to do the 5x5 travel bag and one of the panty liners. The other two pieces in the set are made in an identical way to the ones that I'm going to show you. So if you want to use the video to make the other two, you can. For the bag, I'm going to be using my 5x5 hoop, 2 layers of wash away stabilizer, 2 threads that complement my fabrics, masking tape, fabric scissors, my fabrics and batting cut to size, and I've got a lace zip. You will find lots of information, including a link to this design, in the description below this video. For my front and back fabrics, I'm using a layer cake. These are pre-cut fabrics and they're cut to 10 inches by 10 inches. Out of 2 layer cake pieces, you can get 2 bags. What I did was, for the 5x5, I folded my fabric in half, then in half again. Then I cut down here and cut down these 2 pieces. That will give you 4 triangles. I did the same with the contrasting fabric. So there's my pieces. I took one from each fabric, and then I sewed 2 contrasting pieces together for the back. So I will get two front and backs out of 2 layer cakes, doing it that way. If you're sewing the 8x8, you will get 1 bag front out of 2 pieces. Sorry. So for the back, you will just use one piece. Then for the front, fold it in half, cut along, and that's your 2 pieces of fabric for the front. If you're doing the 8x8 bag, you will get 2 contrasting pieces per piece of fabric. So you will need 4 pieces to do 2 bags. If you don't have a lace zipper, then you can make your own. It's very easy. Take an ordinary zip, a nylon zip that is, and a piece of lace, and then just sew your lace on each side of the zip, and then you can use it in exactly the same way as I'm going to show you with a pre-made lace zipper. You're going to start off by hooping your 2 layers of wash away stabilizer. And then you're going to pin them around the edge. So take your pin, lay it on top of your hoop, inner hoop, push it through, bring it back round and back through the stabilizer again. And that's going to anchor your stabilizer in the hoop to stop it being dragged down between the 2 hoop parts. The larger the hoop, the more pins you use around the edge. Load your file for the bag into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your placement outline for your fabrics. The first fabrics that we're going to be placing are the ones that are going to cover this area here. We're going to turn our hoop over, place the fabric over the top part of this outline and bring it down over the center stitch line here, like so. And then you're going to tape it in place. And the reason why you're putting it this side rather than this side is because eventually you're going to be pulling it back down and then it will cover here. So let's stick that down, sorry. Turn your hoop back. We're now going to do the same on the front. So take your fabric, place it face down, make sure that it comes this side of this stitch line, this center stitch line here, and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure them. We're now going to lay down the batting for this area here, and you're going to line it up over this stitch line here, but up to the center one. And then you're going to bring your fabric back down over the top, and I'm just going to pop a little pin in right out of the way of the stitch line, just to hold that in place. And I'm going to put a little bit of tape here and here, just to hold that flat while it stitches. You're now going to stitch round number 3, and that's going to quilt this area here. So make sure that you've got the right colour for the quilting loaded into your machine. Turn your hoop over. I've removed the tape from the back. Bring your fabric down, just flip it down, and just lightly finger press along there, and then tape the bottom corner. And I'm going to put a little bit of tape each side here just to hold that. You're now going to pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 4, and that's going to secure your lining fabric. We're now going to do the same for the upper part of the bag. So turn your hoop over, place your lining fabric over the bottom section, making sure that it crosses this stitch line here. Fabric face down, and then you're going to tape it in place. Turn your hoop back, and now do the same for the front. Fabric face down, and it's going to cross this stitch line here, and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 5, and that's going to secure your 2 fabrics in place. I've removed my tape from the front as I did before. I've left the back well alone. You're now going to place your batting up to this stitch line here and covering this one here. And then you're going to pull your fabric back over the top. And I'm going to pop a little pin in out of the way of the stitch line in the corner here. I'll show you on the back. That's going to be the stitch line there, and that's my pin right out of the way. I'm going to put a little bit of tape just to hold these edges nice and flat so that my foot doesn't get caught. You're now going to pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 6, and that's going to quilt this area here. So make sure that you've got the right colour thread in your machine for that. Turn your hoop over, remove the tape from your lining fabric, and then flip it upwards and tape it in place. Turn your hoop back, just finger press along that centre line there. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 7, and that's going to secure your lining fabric in place. We're now going to add our zipper. So take your zipper and you're going to place the centre of your zip along the centre line here. So place it over, make sure it's in the right place, and then you're going to tape it down. And I'm putting several pieces of tape on this just to make sure. I'm going to do the other end. And one in the middle. Load the thread colour that's going to match your zip into your machine, And then you're going to stitch round number 8, and that's going to attach this side first. And now we're going to stitch round number 9, and that's going to do the opposite side of the zip. We can now remove the tape. The next step is the most important one. We need to open the zipper up, and I'm going to pull it back about 3/4 of the way, and then I'm just going to pop that down between the opening just so that it doesn't fall about while I'm stitching. And I'm going to place a bit of tape over the top. If you forget to do this step, you're not going to be able to open your bag afterwards, so do not forget. You're now going to place your back fabric face down over the top of the front. So place it right over everything, and then you're going to tape it in place. Pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 10, and that's going to secure it. For today's whoops moment, what if you forget to add your batting at the same time as you add your backing fabric? It's an easy fix. You're going to place your batting over your backing fabric, and you're simply going to stitch round number 10 once more, and that will secure it in place. We're now going to add the lining to our back, so turn your hoop over, place your fabric with the right side facing downwards, and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 11, and that's going to stitch all the way around and leave a gap so that you can turn it. That's all the stitching complete as far as working in the hoop goes. So we're now going to free this from the hoop. I've removed all the tape and pins. We're now going to trim this up, but we're going to leave a piece of fabric like a tongue where the opening is. So I'm going to snip down towards here, and I'm going to leave a 1/4 of an inch before I get to the actual stitch line here. And I'm going to do the same the other side. Okay, let's get rid of some of this stabilizer. And we're now going to trim all the way around the edge from cut line to cut line, leaving a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. And you're going to cut straight through the zip. I'm going to trim this back to about 1/2 inch. And we're now going to turn everything out the right way. So where you've got the gap between the lining, turn it through that gap. Just take your time. It's a small gap, but it's perfectly doable. It's just fiddly. I'm going to take my scissors and poke them into the corners so that they turn out nicely. Before you actually... You're now going to press this so that the two pieces that you had sticking out fold back inside the gap, and it makes it for easy sewing afterwards. So I'm going to go and press this now, and then we'll stitch up the gap. Okay, so I'm just whip stitching along here to close the gap. Okay, so now we're going to open up the zipper. So you're going to take your scissors and you're going to dig them into the stabilizer, and then gently cut along, taking care of course not to cut your fabric. Centre stitch line you can safely cut through because it's done nothing but advise you where to put things. And then lastly, we can turn this out the right way. Remove that bit of tape that's holding my zipper in place. So I'm going to open that up, flip that out the right way. Close up the zipper. And then once more I'm going to press this so that all the seams are nice and flat. And that's a little travel bag completed. So for the panty liner, I'm going to be using my 8x8 embroidery hoop along with 2 layers of wash away stabilizer. I've got my fabrics and batting cut to size. I've got masking tape, my threads that complement my fabrics, my scissors, a sharp stabby tool because we're going to be setting some cam snaps, and the setting tool. And I've also got a layer of moisture proofing. I advise you to use PUL, and that stands for polyurethane laminated fabric, and it's often used for things like nappies, bibs, anywhere where you need a moisture barrier because it's breathable, thin and waterproof. Load your chosen file for the panty liner into your machine. You're also going to want to put your thread in for the quilting that's going to go in the gusset area, and then you're going to stitch round number 1, and that's going to give you your fabric and batting placement outline. Place your batting over the gusset area and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 2 to secure it. Trim away the excess batting from around the edge of the stitch line. Place your gusset fabric over the top of the batting and tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine, and then you're going to stitch round number 3, and that's going to secure the fabric down in place, and it's also going to quilt it. So make sure that you've got the right coloured thread for the quilting in your machine. Next we're going to add the moisture proof barrier. So turn your hoop over and you want to place your PUL face side down, so the plasticky side down, and tape it in place. Turn your hoop back, pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 4, and that's going to secure your PUL. You're now going to attach the fabric for the upper part of the wing here. You're going to place your fabric face down and you want your edge to overlap the outside stitch line of the gusset. And make sure that your fabric, if you're using scraps, is going to, when it's flipped back, will cover the whole of this outline here. So when you're happy with your placement, tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 5 to secure it. We're now going to trim things up a little bit, so turn your hoop over. And we're just going to trim around the edge of this stitch line and just leave about 1/4 inch of your PUL. Turn your hoop back and we're just going to trim off a little bit of the excess here as well, again leaving about 1/4 inch of fabric. Remove your tape and then you're going to flip your fabric that you've just attached up so that it covers this outline, and then you're going to tape it in place, making sure that you've got the right colour thread in for the quilting on this fabric here. You're then going to pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 6. We're now going to do exactly the same for this bottom wing. So place your fabric face down so that this edge of your fabric here overlaps this stitch line here, the outer stitch line of the gusset, and then tape it in place. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 7 to attach it. We're now going to trim up a bit of this excess fabric to within 1/4 inch of this stitch line. Then we're going to flip the fabric back as before and tape it in place. Now going to pop your hoop back into your machine and stitch round number 8. And that's going to secure your fabric and do the quilting as well. We're now going to add our backing fabric. So you're going to place it face down, so right side towards the right side of this, over the top of your whole outline. And then you're going to tape it in place. And I've just trimmed up a little bit of fabric so that I've got somewhere to stick on my hoop. Pop your hoop into your machine and stitch round number 9, and that's going to stitch nearly all the way around, but it's going to leave an opening so that we can turn it out the right way afterwards. You're now going to free your work from the hoop, so remove all tape and pins first. You're now going to trim this up. We're going to cut 2 vertical lines here and here at the opening, and we're going to leave 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. I'm going to remove some of this stabiliser so that it's not in the way. So there's my 2 cuts, and I'm now going to trim right up round the edge, leaving 1/4 inch. I'm just going to trim this down just a little bit so that it's about 1/2 inch wide. And then we can put little snips without cutting the stitch line where the curves are, and that will help it to bend when we turn it out the right way. We're now going to turn it out the right way. It's quite a small opening, but just take your time and it will all go through, no problem at all. And just run your finger around the seam just to push everything out. Now I just roll my seams so that they all fall neatly into place. And these little flaps that we left, they tuck inwards. And then you want to press this, and then you're going to close up the opening. So I'm going to press this now. We're now going to whip stitch the opening so that it's closed. And that's the stitching finished. We're now going to add our cam snap, and that's going to hold the wings closed when in use. So I'm going to press that first, and I'm also going to press it so that it folds neatly along the ditch between the 2 fabrics. We're now going to attach our cam snaps, and for each piece you've got 2 buttons with a spike and a male and a female part. We're going to mark off on our fabric where our snaps are going to go. So take your awl or any sharp stabby tool that will make a hole in fabric. Where the second line of stitching is, that's in the middle of each end. I'm going to push my point through to make a hole, and I'm going to mark this so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so we want these to cross. So the first one that we're going to put in, it's probably easier if you do the male. So take your button with the spike on it and push it through from the back into the hole that you've just made. Push it right the way through. And then you're going to take the male part and place it over the top. Take your setting tool, place it over the whole lot with the button in the black cup and the spike going into this part, and then you're going to squeeze to set the snap. We're going to fold this over. Again, on the second line of stitching in the middle, push your tool through, and that should line up with your snap that you've just set in place. So once you've got the hole, and again I'm going to mark it so that you can see where I've put it. You're then going to set the other snap through, but this time you're going to push the button part through from the top. So I'm just going to mark where it is on the other side because I can't see it because of the fabric pattern. That's it. And then push it through. Place your female part of the snap on top, and once more putting the button into the black cup and the spike into the top, squeeze. And now your panty liner will close nicely. And that's it, completed. I hope you enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified of new stitch alongs as they're published. Do pop along to Kreative Kiwi's Facebook group. There's lots of ideas, help and inspiration there for everybody. And thank you very much for joining me. In the video description you'll find a link for this design, along with a link to Kreative Kiwi's Facebook group and some discount codes as well.